I'd like to welcome you all to the CCIM chapter meeting. Excited to have a all-star panel here today. My name is Jeff Pollock. I'm the current chapter president, and I've got a few announcements for you, and then we'll turn it over to Ann Von Martin, our moderator. Let's see. The Site to Do Business training class scheduled for August 8th, unfortunately, has been postponed. Sounds like bad news, but the good news is the whole platform is being reinvented. So we will be trained on the new and improved platform when that is announced. So we'll stay tuned for that. Mark your calendar for our economic forecast breakfast, or excuse me, our lunch. It'll be at November 13th, Villa Cristina again, I believe. And Dr. Chandon will be our speaker again. He was our speaker last year and back by popular demand. We won't have a meeting in in July, but our August meeting will be a legal update on the 22nd. Catch up on the latest trends, what we need to be keeping up with there. Certainly want to thank our chapter sponsors, Marcus and Millichap, our platinum sponsor, Ackerman and Company, Adams Realtors, The Simpson Company, Wells Fargo, Standard Landscape, Brand Properties, Bank of North Georgia, Excelligent, Anderson Tate and Carr, First Colony Financial Corp., and Strategic Exchange Advisors. Hope y'all will keep those folks top of mind as you have needs for their services. So I'd like to turn the program over to Ann Martin, who is one of our program committee chairs. I'd like to thank the whole committee, Leo Terrazas, Adam Archer, Michael Reeves, and also a special assist from Milan Price. These folks work real hard to put such a talented group together, and we're grateful for their service. Ann is in commercial real estate valuation services at Regions Bank. She's a CCIM designee and a former rhythm and punk guitar rocker. So look forward to having her join us and lead the panel today. Thanks a lot, Ann.
I don't know what to say. It's true, but I must say that I have a 5-octave range, so I can actually sing opera, so I'm not all weird singing punk rock songs all the time. I would like to thank everyone for being here, and definitely our panelists for being here. I'm Ann, and I am the co-chair of programs. I work in valuations for Regions Bank. I'm an assistant vice president in their valuation group. And I'm definitely very excited to be here to introduce these gentlemen. Can you hear me okay? That's better. Thank you. We are going to be discussing the new developments that we have here in the Atlanta market that are underway and also that have been recently completed. We will be talking about trends in the market in the southeastern area, and really would like to let the panelists lead the way. There's a lot of information there is to cover within the short period of time that we have. So if you have any questions, you're very welcome to join in, hopefully at the end of the program, so that we allow all the information to be given to you. But let me go ahead and get started and introduce. Here we have Mark Toro. He is the founder and managing partner and chairman of the board of North American Properties. His major development project is Avalon in Alpharetta. He's known for the redevelopment of Atlantic Station. He leads the acquisition, development, and redevelopment of institutional-grade properties of retail, multifamily, and mixed-use assets throughout the Southeast. And he's an industry veteran with 26 years of leadership experience in commercial real estate, completing more than 60 projects, totaling 19 million square feet, valued at more than $2.5 billion. He has won the Best in Atlanta Real Estate Deal of the Year Award in 2003 and 2010, and the Hispanic Achievement in Business Leaders Awards as Entrepreneur of the Year 2012. Right now, I know he's very excited to be here, but he's most excited that his daughter's wedding is over with. And he's a skier, so he's a family man, and he's a sportsman as well. Also, very glad to have John Hagee here. He's a senior managing director of Hines. His major development project is 100 Northpark in Sandy Springs. He is responsible for the leasing and marketing of office projects and security and corporate service assignments in the Southeast region of the U.S. He's a former director of leasing, marketing, and property management. And he's been active in Atlanta, in the Atlanta commercial real estate market since 1977. He is also a sportsman. He is a mountain climber, a sports fisherman, and a certified level 2 NSCA shotgun instructor. I'll make sure not to anger him. We also here we have David Cochran. He's the president and CEO of Paces Properties. His major development project is Krog Street Market in Atlanta. He is responsible for all aspects of the company's development, management, and leasing operations. He served as president and CEO since 2002, and he brings over 16 years of commercial real estate experience, having developed over $600 million in multifamily and retail projects, including condos and neighborhood strip retail projects. And he graduated with honors from the University of Georgia in finance. And he likes to ski, so here we have another skier. So hopefully we'll have a group together go to the mountains and ski. But he right now is very focused on his family. He's got 2 children. And then finally, but not least, Jay Mitchell. He is the Senior Vice President and Regional Managing Director of Industrial Developments International. He's got 2 major recent completions that he would like to share with you. He's responsible for implementing development and acquisition strategies along with directing IDI's operation in the region. He's an industry veteran with 30 years in commercial real estate, including brokerage assignments and institutional ownership representation, completing over 1,200 lease transactions. And he has developed over 17 million square feet of both speculative and built-to-suit industrial and distribution facilities. And I am afraid to ask him what he likes to do on his spare time. Also another fisherman.
You know, since you asked, you know, after following all these guys, I'm not much of a snow skier. I don't do that. I tried shooting shotguns. I'm not good at it, so John could probably help me with that. I don't have any children, didn't marry, but my claim to fame is I grew up next door to one of your members, Paul Hanna, right over here, and I was trained early on by one of your other members, Alan Joel. So there you go. That's my claim there.
Okay, great. Thank you for that. Well, I'd like to go ahead and start off by allowing the panelists to lead the way and share with us more about these major development projects, its amenities, and share with us the decision factors for this type of new construction and why in the location chosen, and as well as giving us an update on how these developments are progressing and the scheduled completion time for those that are still underway. And I'd like to start off with Mark, since one of his major projects include the repositioning of Atlantic Station. I would like to ask, how does that differ in opportunities and challenges with the development of Avalon?
Wow. Giving a developer a microphone and asking him to talk about his projects like opening a Facebook page of a new mom. I mean, it's just constant. This is not going to end. So hopefully we've got a lot of time. Avalon, as many of you know, is situated on the former site of the Prospect Park project that failed in the Great Abyss. We had chased it off market for a long time with Wachovia and then Wells Fargo. It eventually went to market. We competed and won it. Ended up having to assemble a number of other pieces and build West Side Parkway and there are lots of things involved. Any Alpharetta folks here? So you may be familiar with what they call the mud pit of shame in Alpharetta. For a very long time, the city was kind of plagued with the fact that had been a cratered project. We acquired it in June of 2011, immediately began to redesign and reimagine a plan that would respond to market demands as they presented themselves. And it kind of was a confluence of events. We acquired the site at a reset basis at roughly 25 cents on the dollar, so that we had the room to undensify it, kind of tone it down a little bit. And we found that there were demands in clearly multifamily, since Alpharetta had not zoned multifamily in the last 12 years and had essentially a moratorium in place. In the Class A hotel space, because Marriott Windward was the last hotel built in 2001. There was likely to be an office demand if the environment could be created that was unique enough to differentiate it from a commodity office space in North Fulton. And if we were to append a single-family component to it, it would be such a unique experience that someone could live in either a 3-story townhome or a $2 million estate home and walk to not just Starbucks, but Anthropology and a Ford Fry restaurant and Regal Theaters and Crew Wine Bar and every other retail. So what began as more or less a lifestyle center grew into quite an interesting thing we call Avalon, and it's more, we say it's more than a place to go; it's a place to be, and it grew out of a study of of where retail is headed in response to the threat from e-commerce, and it grew out of a study of the phenomenon of walkability and the preference for people to live in urban environments. So we spent the summer of 2011 studying similarly situated properties across the U.S. and came upon Santana Row in San Jose and the Grove in L.A., did deep dives on both, and have modeled our project essentially to reflect some of the components of that. We are roughly 70% pre-leased in the retail, 50% pre-leased in the loft office, 400 people on the waiting list for single-family homes. There are only 100, which will be everybody wants to be Monty Hewitt now. But at the beginning, somebody said, well, why don't we figure out how to build single-family homes? How hard could that be? Well, nobody volunteered to do it, so Monty stepped up, and he's going to build our single-family. So we are under construction with site work. We start vertical in September. The first phase of retail, which includes Regal, Whole Foods, Anthropology, Orvis, Lululemon, you can imagine the list of retailers. We got roughly almost 40 leases signed to date. First phase opens in October of 2014. The second phase will include a conference center hotel. We're working with the city of Alpharetta. We responded to it, what they call an indication of interest to work a public-private partnership between Avalon and the city to build I don't know if everybody's familiar with the Marriott at Cool Springs or at Sugar Land, Texas, or others, a conference center that we appended to a 300-room 4-star hotel. It will also include the second phase of retail, which will be about 100,000 square feet of upper moderate to luxury retailers and office. So we are currently in the market, as are lots of our peers, trolling for office tenants. We believe that the environment will be such a differentiator, much like if you own that single family home and you could walk to that full amenity base, if you officed in one of those our buildings, you could enjoy that same thing, which is very, very unique in the North Fulton. It's actually very unique in the entire Southeast. I think one of the kickers will be that we will build the first gigabit community in the Southeast, offering fiber to the premises internet speeds, which hasn't been done, as to our knowledge, anywhere here in the Atlanta market. So a tech user with lots of data demands will enjoy an immediate benefit, but we also believe that it will future-proof residents, single-family, hotel guests, and others from bandwidth requirements. So I'm not sure if that answered the question, but you gave me a microphone and asked me to talk about Avalon. Hopefully that wasn't too long.
That's okay. John?
Absolutely. Hope someone was taking notes there. That's a lot of information, and that is fantastic. And I will tell you something, just anecdotally. I'm going to talk about Northpark here in just a moment, but I can tell you we have some clients and interests up in the North Fulton submarket, and the impact of Avalon is being felt up and down the western side of Georgia 400. For so long, that western side, if you all had any developments or any investments on the eastern side, that western side kind of suffered because West Side Parkway was not completed through it. And now our clients, when we're showing our space in Deerfield, they're saying, well, yeah, now, how close are we to Avalon? To that project Avalon's. And so if you can't be at Avalon, you can be at at Deerfield and have access to it. But it is an exciting project, and we're excited to have it in the marketplace. Northpark, the short answer here on why our firm got involved with the Northpark project, really two parts. First part is I had some pretty good familiarity on that project, having worked on the first two buildings, Northpark 400 and 500, during my days at Portman. So we just fundamentally already knew that it was great real estate. In the office business, as you all know, access is key to success of an office building. And in that central perimeter submarket, with now 3 gateways into the submarket, Abernathy Road, Hammond Drive now to a certain degree certainly, and Ashford Dunwoody Road, those gateways are key. And what we are seeing, all of us in our industries and our businesses, is also the incredible impact of transit-oriented development and how modern employers are recognizing the importance of transit in terms of their recipe for choosing a site. So Northpark was just an obvious choice for us to go after. And I was thrilled to know that the same asset manager that I worked for at Northpark 400 and 500 was still there, and Don Mabry with Simpson Housing. So it was a fairly easy assignment for us to latch onto. What none of us never know in our industry is how long it takes these things to get going. And I was looking back at some notes the other day, and I realized that it was mid-2011 when we first signed our agreement with Simpson Housing on behalf of the state of Michigan on that project. So here we are 2 years later. Just this past week, we received approval of zoning for Northpark 700. So I'm going to kind of divide this into 2 quick parts. Northpark 700 is the first office building that we'll concentrate on. We had to take it back through zoning. It was already zoned 480,000 square feet of density, obviously office, so we weren't changing anything on the use, but we did want to differentiate this building. The first 3 buildings, 4, 5, and 600, all at 18 stories. Great buildings, but 1980s and 90s architecture, and we just didn't want to build another 1990s building. So we challenged our architect, Smallwood Reynolds, to come back to us with really a world-class building, and they've done it. I'm sorry I did not bring a board as instructed, so but I will get you all information if I can get contact information here. But the building is differentiated both in architecture and also in height. That was the big challenge for us, was to deal with the neighborhood groups. Love those neighborhood groups. Anybody from Sandy Springs here? I love you. I love you up there. But we finally prevailed with a 4-3 vote, and it wasn't exactly easy to get our 26 stories. So, and in essence, we're not changing anything. We are putting the parking deck up under the office tower to increase the green space at the ground plane. So, if we've learned anything in our industry as developers, it's to pay attention to what consumers are interested in. So, and that was certainly one of the things that we felt like we needed to do. The other component of development, which I'll get into more detail, I'm sure, as we share this microphone, is the property across the street, Northpark 100, which has been picked up in the press. It's really not one address. That's just our application. It says Northpark 100. But that's a very large endeavor, 1.5 million square feet of office space, 500 units of residential, 150,000 square feet of retail, and 250 rooms of hospitality. So a very ambitious project that we are also taking through zoning right now. So I think that answers your questions, and I'll turn it over to my colleagues.
The project we're working on right now is Krog Street Market, and you can basically take everything Mark said and jam it down about 1/8 of the size, I think, and that would be our deal. We, like a lot of people, had to reform our business after the condominium meltdown, and I'm an Atlanta native, born and raised here, and always been an in-town guy, and we had been actively seeking a site, transit-oriented Beltline. We've always been big believers in the Beltline. And we got close to the Beltline with Tyler Perry's old production facility. Took a long time. We had to watch 3 other people put it under contract and drop it. The price was just excessively high, and thankfully after 3 drops he got down to a reasonable level. And then I got a phone call from Mel Stowers one day wanting to see if I wanted to buy a little corner lot he owned across the street, and I was truly looking to do a boutique apartment deal, a tear down, and Tyler Perry's facility was kind of a mishmash of brick buildings and Butler buildings. And that was the plan. It was going to be a tear down. It was just going to be a 125 unit deal. And then Mel called me, and so I went and had lunch with him and said, why don't you just sell me the whole shooting match, because his site was on the Beltline, which is what we truly wanted. And we worked out a deal pretty quick. The whole deal took about 16 months to get closed. And we set our sights on the Stoveworks piece as being the apartment component. And on the Tyler Perry facility, we kind of refocused on one. I took Ford Fry down to the building one day, and he walked in and he said, I'm in if this is the building. If you tear this down, I'm out. And I've always been a big believer in old buildings, but as a developer, it's tough to renovate old buildings, and it's not as easy. But that was meaningful to me, and we started re-looking, for something that was missing in a niche market in town Atlanta. And I can't take credit for it because I'm not this smart. I was sitting down with Kevin Rathman, and he's now a tenant of ours across the street, and I said, what do you see over there? You sit out here on your little porch and you look at this building all day, every day, on your breaks and whatnot. What do you see going over here? And he said, just a simple offhanded comment that kind of put us on our path. He said, I don't know, something like Melrose Market. And next thing you know, we're deep diving on the Ferry Building and Oxbow Market and Melrose Market, and it was just a eureka moment. We said, there's an opportunity for a market in Atlanta, like a true market, like the Ferry Building or like Oxbow. And we assembled a good team of architects along with, we have RJT plus R, Rule Joy, and then we had ASD come in to actually lay out the market within the building, because Rule Joy, that was a little bit dicey for them. And the acceptance from the market has been phenomenal. We're about 70% committed at this point. Leases or letters of intent. It's a 35,000 foot deal. There's 6 restaurants under one roof, which rings a urban market, call it. It's about 22 to 24 stalls, ranging in size from 250 to 600 square feet, each stall is. But it's all under one roof with giant ceilings and clear story glass. And we are under construction, and we should deliver the market before Christmas, believe it or not. And the restaurants, Ford won't be opening until February. He's probably doing his deal first. And then across the street on the Stoveworks piece, we're doing some changes to the Stoveworks. We're going to fix the Rathman's valet area, which is kind of dicey. It's a dead-end corridor. And we are going to build, we just got through the Inman Park neighborhood entitlement process for 222 units on the surface lot, which I've been told by the Beltline people is the first true, directly oriented development deal on the Beltline, because we truly have situated the project to interact directly with the Beltline when that East Side Trail gets finished there, which they'll start doing that as soon as they finish the bridge at Edgewood. And I think that's about it.
Okay, thank
I kept yours off.
Well, there's probably, I'm getting ready to show you why there was probably a good reason. Unlike John, who didn't show up with a display or a poster, because he just forgot to bring one. I didn't bring one on purpose, because industrial buildings are better left to the imagination. And I was told to come prepared to give you a little bit of information on the company I work for, and then give you some trends that we see in the market, and that's what I'll
try to do. I work for IDI, and IDI is an industrial developer. We've been in business for 25 years. We're a private company. We're headquartered here in Atlanta. And over those years, we built 165 million square feet across the country out of our 8 regional offices. So, you know, that's then what are we doing right now? Right now, we have under construction 10 million square feet, or that we'll deliver in 2013, 10 million square feet. And those 10 million square feet are made up of 23 buildings. Of the 23 buildings, 8 of those buildings are build-to-suit. The other are pure speculative development. Currently, right now, we have about 75% leased or committed to those buildings. So, you know, over the United States, things are very, very good. In Atlanta, what we've just completed, we completed a 560,000 foot build-to-suit for Mitsubishi for their U.S. headquarters for their heating and air group up in Northeast Atlanta. So obviously, it's all for them, so that's 100% leased. We also built a spec building out near Six Flags off Thornton Road. That's 650,000 feet, and it's living up to its name. Spec is still isn't leased. But I was doing this yesterday at a Board of Realtors meeting, so I'm thinking any day that's going to be leased. So I'm excited about that. But you know, we sort of match up with the rest of our company. All of our other regions have something similar going on that we do. The other regions of the country, most of them seem to be a little more active than we are. A few more prospects, a few more deals going on. But now we'll just give you a few trends, and I don't know if I'm really seeing a trend. I'm just going to give you some sort of facts of what's going on right now in Georgia. Trends take a little longer than 6 months to get established, I think. But right now, I mean, you don't hear about it too much. In fact, we all, in our business, we rely on a group called CoStar that gives us all the statistics. And CoStar right now tells us that they're 2.5 million square feet or so under construction. And that's really, maybe that's true. But the way I see it and the way we count it up, there are 12 buildings under construction right now that are over 500,000 feet in size. So if there's I don't call that a trend, it's just that's an active piece of our market, the industrial distribution marketplace, are these large 500,000 foot buildings. And, you know, to put it in perspective, I mean, that's, you know, what's that, 10 acres, over 10 acres of land under a roof. I mean, it's just, these are huge buildings, and some even, you know, twice that size that are out there. Now, they're not as valuable as or cost as much as y'all's projects, but, you know. That's good.
That's really good.
Yeah, we can get out of trouble a little quicker. But for speculative development, our building, the 650,000 feet, and one of our competitors, Exeter, has a 360,000 foot spec building going up. Those are the only two buildings of size over 150,000 feet or 100,000 feet or so that are true speculative developments here in town. You know, what I see for the industrial market for that next year, there's not, you know, once that 8.5 million feet are completed over the next 12 or so months, there's not that much of that speculative building in the pipeline to be built, or build-to-suits to be built. From a speculative standpoint, until we're successful and Exeter's successful, I don't expect our competitors will jump in there and do that either. So we'll see how our success and Exeter's success pans out. For financing, you know, I don't do the financing of our buildings. We have a group downtown in our corporate office that does that, but you know, as we all know, it's been a tough road to get financing on these buildings, especially these speculative buildings. But all of a sudden, starting on our more recent speculative projects, you know, before we were putting a couple of build-to-suits with a few speculative buildings, sort of packaging them up and getting our financing that way. They weren't cross-collateralized, but for whatever reason, the banks liked sort of a bunch at once. But right now, we're doing buildings, speculative buildings, where we're getting a 70% loan to cost. The interest rate's 2.5% over LIBOR. The recourse, once the building's complete, these are all pure spec buildings. Once the buildings are complete, the recourse is about 25%. And we've got most of the major banks that are happy to lend us that money. I don't know if that's the case for all our competitors, but for us it is. We didn't default on any loans during the downturn. It was a little bit of a struggle, but we didn't do it. So I don't know if that's helping us get that money. Like I said, you'd have to talk to my competitors to see if it's a similar situation for them. But I think for all of us, it's similar in that you can get money now if you have a well-located, planned project, and you don't necessarily, well, you don't have to have pre-leasing for us for these huge projects down here. I'm sure you have to have a little bit.
Okay,
Just a
thank
little
you.
bit.
Thank you, Jay, so much. Got a little
You
ahead
gonna
of me.
cut me off? Or?
I have to.
I mean,
sorry.
everybody else, I'm the last guy that goes, everybody, I know I wasn't a rock star, and I don't drive motorcycles, but.
You're still a bigger rock star than I am. But I would like to kind of go back to the topic of trends, because I kind of want to go back to the other property types, since these mixed-use projects entails, apartments and office, retail. And I would like to start back with Mark and go down the line and ask more about, from a developer's perspective, kind of walk us through the trends that you're seeing in the market rents, vacancy, and cap rates for these property types. And what is your view on the current state of the Atlanta Southeast commercial real estate development market? What have you noticed in the past 6-12 months? What trends do you anticipate in the future? And also, what was different from the marketing matrix that made the decision to build these projects different from those matrices in the past?
Wow, that's a lot of question. Before I
Trying
answer
to
it, though,
put it
I
all
want
together.
to reflect on it. As I'm listening to each story, it's interesting how no matter how great a deal you may have, you always want the other guy's deal. 30 years ago, when I was a project manager on Northpark 400 for the general contractor, I coveted the site across the street that John's going to be building on now. I live in Midtown, and I spend a lot of time on the Beltline. I covet David's site. Would love to be doing a kind of a Swiss watch kind of a deal with an old building and Ford Fry and all the optimists, and it would just be fantastic. And who wouldn't love to have 10 million square feet under construction? No matter what it looks like. Sorry. But the trend that we are following in the mixed-use arena is that we believe that the confluence of two trends. One is that the reurbanization of America is now well underway. I mean, if you look at the resurgence of in-town Atlanta and the kinds of things that we are seeing. I mean, from my balcony on the 35th floor of the building on 14th Street, I can see 4 tower cranes. And you can imagine back in the 80s when we were building, in the 90s when we were building, it wasn't the 90s, it was the 80s, yeah. That we were building in the suburbs, you could see tower cranes all over the suburban Atlanta market and each one of the perimeter submarkets. But now it's very much underway in town, and that's driven by a number of things, not the least of which is a propensity for the baby boomer and the echo boomer to seek an authentic, urban, walkable, fully amenitized environment. And whereas John and I grew up, raised our kids in East Cobb, they wouldn't live there on a bet. And we now are seeking to have that kind of energy and excitement and diversity of experience that real cities have. And Atlanta's grown up. It's going to be a real city, and it's going to happen, and it's going to happen soon. Now, if we could get some real transit, it would be a really good thing. But that trend toward reurbanization and walkability is a major force that has really taken hold. The second trend is that e-commerce is here to stay and is kicking our ass in the retail business. If we were in the business that we had been in, which was suburban, ground-up, big-box retail development, well, no one's in that business anymore. It does not exist. There are a smattering here and there where Whole Foods may be driving something or you put a couple of boxes together, but that business is over. I don't know if it's over forever, but I was with the director of real estate for Target a number of years ago, and he said, the rate at which we had been growing, we will never, in my career, his career, and he and I are the same age, see the kind of growth that we've seen. Light went off, raised the flag, we're out. That business is now being overtaken by e-commerce. What we see in the retail business is that, A, we've got to be aligned with proprietary brands. So if you're J. Crew or Brooks Brothers or Apple or Gap or whatever, whether the sale is done online, whether you're showroomed, anybody familiar with showrooming? Walk up to in Best Buy, take your phone out, take your Red Laser app, shoot the SKU, and ship it to your house and walk out. That's a problem, and it's real, and it's happening today in the retail world. So between showrooming and e-commerce generally, the mass merchandiser in the middle is being crushed. The low end, highly automated, super low price, convenient retailer will prosper and continue. Walmart's not going away. The high end, high touch, experiential, high service, luxury retailer will prosper. They're not going away because shopping is still a sport to some. Everything in the middle is going to get crushed. So if anybody's interested in the retail world, there's a book written by Doug Stevens recently released called Retail Revival that kind of speaks to this. And we're seeing it every day. So when we think about mixed use, the heartbeat of most of these mixed use projects, as is the case with Atlantic Station, is the retail. And when we saw, I live on 14th Street, I look out my window at Atlantic Station every day, and you see 1.5 million square feet of office, you see 3,000 residential units, 1.5 million square feet of retail, 14 acres of undeveloped land, failing miserably because the heartbeat was slowing to, it was severely threatened. We had the opportunity to acquire that asset, really inject a lot of heart and soul, and all we said about Atlantic Station was all it needed was somebody who'd give a shit, and with a lot of money. We acquired that on a reset basis with a lot of room to be able to inject the kind of experiences that were necessary to bring shoppers back onto the property, to lure retailers back, to re-merchandise it, and make it respond to the market. In order for these, unless it's a mixed use with a retail as an ancillary use, so if it's 400 units of apartments with 10,000 square feet of ancillary retail, these large projects have got to will rise and fall on the back of the retail. So getting the mix right, getting the merchandise right, and responding to what's next in the retail world, skating where that puck is going, proprietary brands, highly experiential. So it's, the Rick Caruso at the Grove and Americana at Brand and his other projects get it exactly right. We've sent 50 people to the West Coast to spend a week at Santana Row and the Grove. Take copious notes, spend a lot of time with their management. They're free to, they share a lot with their concierge and their valet and all their secret shoppers, and it's amazing the suite of services that they offer. We were I took a restaurant group who were recruiting for Avalon out there, and I said, guys, you don't get it. I understand why you don't get it because you've never seen it. Get on the plane with me. Let's go to San Jose. We'll walk Santana Row. We'll go to LA. We'll walk the Grove. And when you leave there, you'll understand what we're talking about. We were standing in the parking deck of the Grove where the valet drops off and the concierge kind of booth is, concierge desk. And this guy looked around and said, what hotel are we in? This is not a hotel. This is a parking deck for a shopping center. That's where it's going. And that, in order for us to compete in the retail world, the middle's going to get cut. We're not interested in playing in the low end because you can't make any money. But it's going to take a lot of really high-touch, intense focus on service, hospitality, and the experience. And that, and the apartments above, the office associated with it, the residential will all ride on the back of that experiential retail. So that's kind of where things are going.
Thank you, Mark. John?
Sure.
Thank you, please.
There's so much to be honestly learned from the retail industry for those of us in the office industry, because so much of what drives that kind of success also will drive our office market. Mark started out talking about who our customer is today, and our customer is, of course, a broad spectrum of people that are working in our office buildings, but the customer in the future is the millennial, and we have to recognize that. There's an interesting stat, and I think I even heard you quote this, Mark, at one point, but today 36% of our workforce is the millennial generation, and in the space of time between now and 2030, that number jumps up to 75%. So the decision makers that we're working with, this is to the question of trends, the decision maker that we're working with today, kind of talked about it a little bit on the top end, very modern employers that recognize that the location of this real estate and the services that are being provided by that real estate has to be in sync with the generation of people that they're going to be bringing into their companies, not just today, but into the future. And they're voting with their feet, frankly. I mean, they're making decisions with their feet. They're very focused on connectivity. They're very focused on markets where that generation of employee is comfortable. It's where they want to be. It's where they want to live, et cetera, et cetera. I'd almost say that this may be to the peril, unfortunately, of kind of that disconnected exurb building that's so far out into the north. And I've got great friends in the land business and in the residential business that will debate that with me all day long. But truly, if you look at the markets in Atlanta, here's kind of a test of the markets. If you look in the markets of Atlanta today, and this isn't just unique to Atlanta. Obviously, this is across the board. But it's those markets that have that connectivity. Midtown, Buckhead, Central Perimeter. Those are the markets that have seen the most success in terms of real absorption. How many times have you heard about State Farm making their move to Central Perimeter? I'm not going to talk about that any more than I just did. But that's a good example. State Farm, by way of example, looked very hard up at the North Fulton submarket, and specifically our property that we represent in Deerfield. And it was the lack of transit that they could have done an extremely good economic deal up there. And there's plenty of space for them to concentrate their facilities. They came down to Central Perimeter and made that decision to be there because they saw the value of Central Perimeter and all that connectivity. So that's a clear trend that we're seeing and that we've got to all pay attention to. The other quick trend that I'll acknowledge is that we're seeing our employers densify in a big way. We're building our buildings currently to an expected ratio of 5 per 1,000 now. We think that's going to get even more and more dense. And of course, the brokerage community that we work with and we love. How many brokers are here in the room? There you go. They're beating on us to make sure that our parking ratios track that kind of densification. Very hard to do. And if you talk to the employers, parking important, but they recognize that projects that do have access to transit, and I know, I'm beginning to see some eyes roll into the back of your heads right now, and here goes this guy talking about transit. But it's something that we have in our city that is unique, and trust me when I tell you, there are employers right now, I can give you examples of two in particular. One is the Auto Trader, by way of example, in the Central Perimeter submarket. Talk to the human resource people at Auto Trader. They'll tell you that upwards to, this doesn't sound like a huge number, but in my book it's a pretty damn big number, 30 to 40% of their employees arrive daily via MARTA. They're living down in Midtown. They're young people. Average age of that employee at Auto Trader is about 26 to 27 years old, young people. They're not living out in the suburbs. They're living down in town where they find that and they're comfortable with that connectivity. So rapid transit, and of course, think about where Auto Trader is, of course, at Perimeter Summit. They're still having to make a connection via a little bus, but it is that kind of trend that we all have to pay attention to.
Thank you.
What was the question?
Trends.
I think that the transit aspect is one side of it that I kind of rolled my eyes in the back of my head when I was trying to make myself believe that it was a meaningful aspect of our deal. Then they actually saw the Bell Line get built. I think a lot of us were blown away by the fact that it actually got done, and it's still getting done. And I think the one component of our deal down on Krog Street that was a little bit quirky in the sense that it was not, office space has never been something that we've sought to buy or own for that matter. But the Stoveworks is a unique product. It's a loft office. It's very quirky. It's very cool. But at the same time, I was very hesitant as to that aspect of the deal. You know, what is the long-term viability of owning it, exiting it, and what do you do with it in the interim? And what if you have a huge tenant that just walks out? We've got a sizable tenant that's in there, and I think the gestation of a small tech company, then when it grows from 3,000 feet to 14,000 feet, and then it makes that big jump to 100, 150, a lot of times you see those tenants jump to North Fulton areas or Buckhead to the Class A tower, because one, it's a size requirement, and two, they got an equity partner that, Lloyd's of London or something, they want a Class A office space. I think we're going to lose our lead tenant at Stoveworks, which is a group called Carlytics, but at the same time, they're jumping to Ponce City Market, most likely, which is Beltline driven. Which I think that's just an example of the ripple effects. I think a lot of people were scratching their heads as the Ponce City Market office side of things. It's a lot of office. But, judging from what I've heard and know about their office, they're crushing it. They've got a few big deals, and I think the transit aspect is huge because there's a ton of bikes parked in our parking lot every day from people that ride to the office and pile in, and they get there, they work, then they leave, and they hang out in the area, and they are looking for that true amenity package, which was not necessarily the amenities that you build, it's the area, which is what was so compelling about the site for us. So I think the transit side of the thing is huge. I think the days of being able to just build an apartment project or a retail deal because the site's good. Location is still always going to be the driver, but I think there's always got to be, nowadays there's got to be that tangible. There's got to be something meaningful as to why. Why is it going to be sustainable? Why is it going to retain value? What's going to give it legs in the event that there's a blip on the screen, you lose 4 tenants and it gets a little bit of a black eye? How does it recover? You've got to have something more than just, XYZ tenants and XYZ experience. And Mark, you've done a great job with the Lank Station, by the way.
Thank you, David. I would like to give Jay the opportunity to start off. Actually, I'd like to kind of continue talking about what you were talking about on trends and financing, but also kind of give you shotgun on starting a new discussion on what are the components that attract business owners and landlords to industrial properties, and then when we talk, with the other panelists or hear from the other panelists and then mention their particular property type, and the lease-up strategies and the timeline for leasing it up. What is the pre-lease commitment necessary to pull a new development such as yours, and what advice would you give brokers in their potential business with you? And then, of course, finish it off because we only have about 10 more minutes. Briefly mention.
You want me to speak for everybody?
You're in a hot seat.
Just briefly mention financing and just the accessibility. You already mentioned that, but as far as the leasing strategies, what are you
Big
seeing?
expectations, Jay. Come on.
Absolutely.
So I was, in an effort not to get cut off this time, how much time do I have?
You're on the clock.
Do I have a minute and then we'll pass it back? I really didn't catch all that, but I'll, and I gave you most of my trends, but, leasing, everybody up here I'm sure has done a fair amount of leasing. And what do you do? Well, it all starts when you start deciding what area of town you're looking at, what kind of product type you're building. You talk to all the brokers before you do anything. You talk to all your customers before you do anything, and then you just lay out a marketing plan that you think is going to be successful, and you pay the brokers a fee, and everything works out. And that's what we do. I'll mention one other trend. I don't know, it is certainly a trend, is what Mark's talking about, the e-commerce. From what I understand, only 5% or so of retail sales are over the internet. At my house, about 95% of them, if I'm doing them over the internet. I bought chainsaws, pants, you name cars. I bought all kind of things on there. I hate going shop. Everything. Well, no, I got this at your building, Stockton's, downstairs. When you say, I'm trying to support you, John. Stockton's tie. But Joe Banks pants. This way everybody sees this. And I'm in the industrial market. We got to be real careful with our money.
Yes, sir.
But a trend, the e-commerce, yes, absolutely, that's a trend. It's presenting a lot of challenges to our customer, the distribution customer. Some of these customers, you'll see a Home Depot, they'll dedicate an entire building to their e-commerce sales, 1 million square feet. Others, not our customer, but Carter's Baby Products, they have a large building in Northeast Atlanta, and they have e-commerce mixed in with the rest of their operation. So they figured out a way to service their retail stores, their e-commerce buyers, and then their wholesale operation out of there. So what does that mean? You know, we're out building buildings. Thankfully, we don't build a bunch of them at a time. We'll build one as it gets leased up. We'll replace it with another one if that segment of the market is active. But we have pad sites alongside that. In Atlanta, in Georgia, we have 700 acres of development of land. Those are all in developments, all in parks, and we have graded sites. So we have those graded sites for a reason, trying to attract someone for a build-to-suit, a little less risky. Also, when you have an e-commerce type company, their use is a little different. The building itself is basically the same, but they typically have a lot more employees. So if you're out there trying to maximize your coverage and make every nickel you can on these industrial buildings, and probably what John was alluding to, you know, all of a sudden, you know, you put a whole lot of parking out there, you got to charge more for your building, and then you never make a deal unless that, you know, the needle in the haystack shows up, which is the e-commerce user that has to have it. So we can thankfully have these pad sites and customize our or build the site to the user's requirement. But that's something that we have to look at, because we don't want to build a building that's functionally obsolete next month. You know, we want them to not ever be functionally obsolete best we can. That's my trends.
Thank you, Jay. I'd like to continue with Mark. Give us a brief.
Well, let me first echo what John and David said about transit. I like to say that I'm too old, white, male, and straight to know what the in-town market wants. I see 2, maybe 3 faces under 30 years old here. Everybody in this room needs to heed what John just said. And whether you ride MARTA or not, it's the future. MARTA, bikes, Beltline, train, streetcar. If anybody's, crotch rockets, yes. Scooters. We put in scooter parking at Atlantic Station. It's packed every day. Scooters, like a European, like a real city. Atlanta, Georgia. Imagine that. If you stand on the corner of 14th and West Peachtree at 5 o'clock, you look north, you'll see 2 lines, one coming out of One Atlantic Plaza and one Atlantic Center, one coming out of MARTA, to get on buses to ride to the suburbs. Regular folks just like us riding transit. And I can't, I know I hear it all that, I mean, when we went to Alpharetta and started to build a, you know, essentially an urban environment in a suburban setting, I get eye rolls from the folks who love their SUVs that get 9 miles a gallon, they got 6 cup holders and their kids and whatever. But the fact is, the future is our children. My girls who raised in East Cobb wouldn't live there on a bet. And it's not that, listen, I don't mean it. I like to call myself the Johnny-come-lately reurbanization zealot. I'm like my dad who smoked for 40 years and then walked up to somebody and said, "Put that out, you're killing yourself." I raised my kids in suburbs, love the environment, everybody loves it. Our kids don't want it, and they are the future. So these employers, great example, Ogilvy Worldwide, office in Roswell. They are the digital marketing group for the entire worldwide company, 120-something employees. Office in Roswell, Chris Millhouse lives in East Cobb, great commute for the decision maker, right? You know, that's why all this Country Club of the South decision makers, office in North Fulton and however that works. At one point he said to himself, my brain trust, the people who are making me money don't live here. We got to move where they live. They took the 21st floor of a BB&T building at Atlantic Station. Transit, mixed use, fully amenitized, walkable, urban environment. It's where the world is headed. So I recognize that none of us are cut from that cloth. But if you have a kid in his 20s, listen to them. If you got somebody in your office, listen to them. They will tell you where the future is and where the money is to be made in this business. Because I'm on the Urban Design Mixed Use Council at ULI, and we had a whole discussion about suburban office parks. They made a joke about, I don't know what the Suburban Office Council's talking about, because there's nothing to talk about. It's like suburban retail. I'm not here to bash the suburbs, because again, lived there for my whole life, but the future is headed where the young people want to live and where they want to work.
I'll,
Yes.
you want me to hit real quick? I'm going to hit,
Real quick.
get off the trend thing just a moment, and hit a couple of interesting metrics that I think you're driving at also in terms of some questions. The pre-leasing is the only way the next wave of office buildings are going to happen in the city of Atlanta. There are some markets in the country, San Francisco, New York City, D.C., where pre-leasing is just not necessary, but certainly in Atlanta it is. 75% is the threshold that we're hearing from our equity and our debt sources. So get ready. We have to be flexible. We have our 488,000 square foot approved building in Sandy Springs, and the two buildings that we're talking about at Northpark. We're ready. If a client comes along and we like their credit, we're ready to reduce the size of that building to get to the 75% threshold. So we want to get underway with some development, so we're going to have that kind of flexibility. Rental rate, get ready. Cost to build those suburban core buildings in Central Perimeter, $330 a square foot. We built basically those same buildings back in the first wave of buildings at Perimeter Summit at $180 a square foot. It's purely a function of what it costs to build these buildings. We've also, like it or not in our country, because construction has just basically gone completely flat, we've lost a huge resource of our construction personnel. So there's a huge amount of competition. We hope that builds back. We might see some moderation in construction pricing. But right now, that's the number that we're all looking at. Talk to anybody that's trying to get a building started right now. Those are the numbers that our general contractors are quoting us. Suburbs, a little less because we don't have to build structured parking, but it's still in the $260 a square foot range for a surface park building. And in the true urban area, midtown, downtown, we think the number is closer to $380 a square foot. So those are driving rental rates that are in the mid-30s, $34, $35 a square foot, full service. Not one glimmer, but a good news component of that is that these high-performance buildings are less expensive to operate. So buildings that we're currently operating at $12 a square foot, we can see that we can operate these buildings for about $10 a square foot. So that helps a little bit. But still, that net rent component, as you can see, is high. Where have we seen those kind of rental rates? We've seen those rental rates in Buckhead, certainly in Midtown. We almost got to that point in the last uptick in Central Perimeter. We were about $31 a square foot before the rug got yanked out from under us, and it dropped into the low 20s. But the upper end class of buildings in Central Perimeter right now are marketing their spaces in the $28 to $29 a square foot range. So it's moving, and that's where we're going to have to be.
Thank you, John. And I'm going to put David on the spot. Can you share with us within 60 seconds so we can go into Q&A?
What am I sharing? I think I guess in my 60 seconds I will say that the creative approach to development is probably the key thing that we constantly make ourselves focus on, because back when we started doing in-town deals in 2004 or 5, you still were just buying a piece of dirt, clearing it, building something. Nowadays, there's not near as much land stock in and of itself, but the pockets of good locations just don't allow for it. We're involved in 2 projects right now where we're tearing up a parking lot to build apartments, but yet that parking lot's full all day, every day right now because someone else is using it. Contingency plans to get through the pain is how you focus in and you build a parking deck back that serves both purposes. You both own it together and you move on down the road. And in doing so, you're able to take an approach to the parking in and of itself from the standpoint of sharing the parking. So where we would typically build a parking deck that's got 1 1/4, 1.5 spaces per unit, we're now looking at delivering a deal where you're doing about 0.85, 1 space per unit, because you're sharing the other uses parking during the day. And we have, and I'll leave it in with this, we have had a parking consultant because our equity partners out of New York just couldn't really get it. They said, well, don't you just need 1.5 per unit? I mean, what if the guy's got a girlfriend? And the whole on-peak, off-peak, just peak parking times just wasn't resonating. So we hired this parking consultant. My equity guys came in town. We met over there, and the parking consultant at the end of the meeting grabs his backpack, stuffs his sock and his pant leg in his sock, and then goes and gets on a bike and leaves. And needless to say, my equity partner kind of looked at me kind of cross-eyed, because then the next time I met with this guy, we were out at our architect's office, and he goes, guys, I got to wrap it up. I got a zip car, so I got to get back. And I didn't even know what a zip car was, but it works. Did I finish under my time? Jay?
I'm done.
It's good. Okay, great. So we're going to wrap this up now, and I'd like to allow one question from the audience, please. So the fastest hand, unless you want to be here another 10 minutes, I'm okay with 2, 3 questions. It's up to you. But I did see that hand up first. So.
You guys did a great job. I have a question for you as it relates to whether it's office, retail, whatever. Are you seeing a correlation between rents and creating the experience on the property? Because experience is cost. And I agree with everything you all said. Mark, phenomenal job. But are you seeing correlation between rents and experience?
Yes. And it is a short answer. Repeat the question. Ralph asked, do you see a correlation between the experience and rents? And it is enormously expensive. Our CAM at Avalon will be 2.5 times what it would be in a standard shopping center. However, we're seeing retail rents tripping the $40 triple net number, and we're projecting, we think we're vastly undershooting the apartment rents because there are only 250 units available in this space. We had an office user who recently signed a lease who said, I want 10,000 square feet there, and I want that apartment. And his broker said, well, wait, you got to negotiate this. No, I want 10,000 square feet there, and I want that apartment, whatever it costs. That experience can only be had right there at Avalon. That similar experience can only be had in certain segments. It can only be had in Virginia Highlands. It can only be had in Decatur. It can only be had in Midtown. It can only be had at Atlantic Station. That walkability has tremendous value. Chris Lineberger, who runs Locus, recently did a study of Washington, D.C. and cited the value increment in walkability, and claims to have created a set of empirical data that indicates how much more money theoretically your asset is worth in a walkable environment from a scale of 1 to 9. He's undertaking that study right now in Atlanta. He's identified 5 communities he's studying. It's an important piece of data. It's worth money, and we're seeing it in real live rents today.
Sure, I'm over here to the left.
Jay, I want to ask you about how much beer we drank out of the tree house down by the river, but I'll save that for off Friday. Mark, I wanted to ask, in the suburban-urban trend, and when our kids have kids, and they're going to be going to school, don't you think they're going to want to go back out in the suburbs?
Maybe. What we're seeing for instance, I was on the elevator at Atlantic Station the other day, and a woman gets on with a 18-month-old in a stroller, and I said, are you going to Tot Spot? She said, what's Tot Spot? I said, well, it's something we do here at Atlantic Station on Tuesday mornings, and we put a corral up in Central Park, and we got 40 or 50 toddlers bumbling about. There is clearly a trend that what we believe to be the trend, just purely anecdotally, is UGA grad goes to Buckhead because that's where the college bars are. After they get they mature past the college bar scene, they want to move to Midtown or Decatur, a real urban environment. They want that lifestyle. They connect, they have kids, they tough it out until about 3 or 4 years old, and they say, oh shit, what are we going to do now? Well, what we're seeing is a trend toward family formation being later in life, so that the income level is such that those young families can afford to go to private school, A, or B, more importantly, and much more well supported, is that they are toughing it out in-town schools. So if Inman Park Elementary, or creating schools, charter schools. So the Inman Park Middle, Morningside Elementary, Grady High School track is extremely strong. I mean, if you could imagine, Grady High School, incredible. It is incredible what is going on in Grady High School today. Nobody could imagine it, but the fact is people are standing and fighting, and they demand education, and they're marching down to Grady High School and said, I'm going to leave my kid here, but you damn well better teach him what you need to teach him.
My daughter is a school teacher in Midtown, and just kind of interesting little anecdotal things you hear. She's telling me, Dad, you can't imagine the number of not real job offers, but inquiries that are coming from different sources about new schools that are being contemplated, and teachers, would you be willing to leave your current school to join our school? So it's exactly what's happening.
Okay, well, thank you very much. The gentlemen are going to stay here afterwards. If you have any questions, yes.